UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very
Tes. Ya, Mbak. this. Not it. The Honorable Rector. Check. Tes.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relation, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned here in my country, because Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a Social Trust Fund UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relation, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned. Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a Social Trust Fund UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis
tidak mimpi-mimpiku. Kau bisa merebut senyumku, tapi sungguh tak akan lama. Kau bisa merobek hatiku, tapi aku tahu obatnya. Manusia-manusia kuat, itu kita. Jiwa-jiwa yang kuat, itu kita. Manusia-manusia kuat, itu kita. Jiwa-jiwa yang kuat, itu kita. Kau bisa hitamkan putihku, kau takkan gelapkan apapun. Kau bisa runtuhkan jalanku, kan ku temukan jalan yang lain. Manusia-manusia kuat, itu kita. Jiwa-jiwa yang kuat, itu kita. Manusia-manusia kuat, itu kita. Jiwa-jiwa yang kuat, itu kita.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center
I want to
for
say please
International
welcome
Cooperation,
to
Legal
our
Aid Center,
guest
Center for
speaker
the Study
today,
of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management,
Professor
Center for Communication and Public Relations,
Kathleen, McCarthy,
and Center
and
for
then
Religious Moderation and Science
the
Integration.
Director
My
of
husband Fauzia
LPPM
actually is to take
UIN
back what
Syarif
of London in my
Hidayatullah
country, because
Jakarta,
Indonesia is a much
Professor
more developed
Amelia,
country
Fauzia,
than the
MA,
Gambia,
Ph.D.
and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a Social Trust Fund, UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relation, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned here in my country, because Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At in Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a social trust fund in Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relations, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned here in my country, because Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a social trust fund UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relations, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned here in my country because Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a Social Trust Fund, UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much. UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta invite you to collaborate and enhance learning, teaching, and research in this university in order we can share our knowledge and experience. Our faculty and students are dynamic and very inclusive and welcome all students to come here to share knowledge and science.
UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta is one of the largest and prestigious Islamic institution in Indonesia. This university has produced a number of notable Muslim scholars such as Harun Nasution, Nur Khalis Majid, and Azumadi Azra.
It's a lovely university and they give chance to international students a lot.
When there are some international students, we got international exposure, right? And we want to be a world-class university.
The Institute of Research and Community Empowerment, we have Center for Research and Publication, Center of Community Service, Center for International Cooperation, Legal Aid Center, Center for the Study of Gender and Children, Center of Journal Management, Center for Communication and Public Relation, and Center for Religious Moderation and Science Integration.
My hopes for the future actually is to take back what I've learned here in my country because Indonesia is a much more developed country than the Gambia, and there are some things that I've learned here that I would like to implement in my country in the future.
LPPM is Institute for Research and Community Empowerment. At UIN Jakarta, we have a number of prestigious research centers, such as Center for the Study of Islam and Society. We also have a social trust fund UIN Jakarta.
Our university provides three main areas in the study, that Islam, science and technology, and also humanities. I welcome you all to the research and study here, and we work together to solve out the world in order to be better in the future. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wa bihi nasta'in wa ala umuri dunya waddin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil. The Honorable Rector of UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Professor Asep Saepudin Jahar, MA Ph.D. The Honorable Director of LPPM UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Professor Amelia Fauzia, MA Ph.D. The Honorable Vice Dean of Faculty of Economic and Business UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Dr. Thank you very much. The honorable speaker today, Professor Kathleen McCarthy, Ph.D. from the Graduate Center, City University of New York, and the Director of Center of Philanthropy and Civil Society and visiting Professor of UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. Ladies and gentlemen who are here in the theater room of FEV UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and also who are joining online from wherever you are. Firstly, let's say thanks to our God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has been giving us his blessing and mercy. Secondly, might be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has guided us into the right ways of life. Good morning and welcome everyone to this seminar. On behalf of Social Trust Fund UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you for taking the time to attend the seminar of Globalizing Philanthropy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Frizga Nuria Arsita, and I'm your anchor for today's seminar. It is my pleasure to be the anchor for this seminar. So please let me read the agenda, schedule of this seminar. The first agenda is opening. The second agenda is keynote speech. The third agenda is seminar with the theme Globalizing Philanthropy. The fourth agenda is discussion, and the last agenda is closing. So the first agenda is opening. Let's start this agenda by reading Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. And before we continue to hear the speech, we will sing together Indonesia National Anthem and hymn UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. So please, ladies and gentlemen, please be stand up. For the next song is hymn UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta.
Jayalah negara, jayalah bangsa.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The second agenda is speech. So, the opening speech is from the committee represented by Vice Dean of FEB UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. For Dr. Erika Amelia, would you please join to the podium, and time is yours.
Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah, asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Allahumma sholli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi washabihi ajmain amma ba'du. Yang saya hormati Direktur LP2M UIN Sarjana Jakarta, Profesor Fauzia, Ph.D. Kemudian Sekretaris LP2M Mr. Saepudin Kalimas, selanjutnya Sekretaris Program Doktor Perbankan Syariah Ibu Rahmawati Ph.D. Kemudian pembicara kita, narasumber kita Profesor Kathleen dari University of New York, welcome. Kemudian para teman-teman mahasiswa yang ada di ruangan ini ataupun yang ada di Zoom, mahasiswa-mahasiswa dari UIN Sarjana Jakarta, serta yang ikut berkolaborasi ada STF, kemudian ada Center of Islamic Economic and Finance Development, Philanthropy Indonesia, Forum Zakat, dan program Magister Sejarah dan Kebudayaan Islam. Saya ucapkan banyak terima kasih atas kegiatan hari ini, Prof. Amel, yang memiliki seminar dengan tema Globalizing Philanthropy yang diadakan di Fakultas Ekonomi. Mohon maaf Pak Dekan belum bisa menghadiri pada kegiatan hari ini. Sekali lagi kami sangat mengapresiasi kegiatan hari ini. Mudah-mudahan kegiatan hari ini dapat bermanfaat buat semuanya. Dan kemudian kami mohon maaf jika ada hal-hal yang kurang berkenan selama nanti proses kegiatan ini berlangsung. Mudah-mudahan kegiatan ini bisa membawa banyak manfaat buat mahasiswa-mahasiswa kami, khususnya di Fakultas Ekonomi dan Bisnis dan juga di UIN Sarjana Jakarta. Demikian yang bisa saya sampaikan. Sekali lagi selamat berseminar dengan narasumber kita yang sudah ada di sini yang sangat luar biasa dan bisa berdiskusi lebih lanjut tentang filantropi. Demikian dari saya, lebih dan kurangnya mohon maaf. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Give a big applause to Dr. Erika Amelia for the speech, and I want to say thank you very much for your speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is the main agenda that we are waiting for, not only us here, but for those who are joining online in Zoom, and also the seminar with the theme Globalizing Philanthropy. So in this seminar, we will examine the worldwide expansion of the community foundation movement and the development of various models influenced by local philanthropic tradition, which may also encompass religious cultures in certain instances. We will explore how this global philanthropic institution can define the concept of social justice within the context of diverse cultures. Additionally, we will investigate whether innovative forms and models of charitable giving have the potential to impact the global growth of philanthropy. And also I want to inform you that these are very interesting issues. And now let us start with the first session. Firstly, let me introduce our moderator today is Mr. Haryo Mojopahit, who will guide you during this seminar. So for the information, Mr. Haryo Mojopahit graduated as Master of Science in Nonprofit Management in Eastern University in 2018. Also, he is actively working as a General Manager of Communication and strategic alliance in Dompet Duafa. And now, please allow me to invite our moderator. Please welcome Mr. Haryo Mojopahit, and I will hand over this session for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to moderate, to become host of this event, of this seminar. So yeah, I think that philanthropy, or right now, Bu Amel or Prof Amel always tells us about philanthropization. So philanthropization is a term in Indonesia when we see a lot like society in Indonesia, they try to yeah, like the Indonesian society, right? They are really okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, is it clear? Okay, so yeah, saya pakai bahasa Indonesia dulu ya, nanti saya translate dalam bahasa Inggris, biar nggak nervous maksudnya. Jadi, Bu Amel selalu cerita kepada kita tentang satu fenomena yang namanya filantropisasi. Jadi filantropisasi itu adalah betapa setelah reformasi, kita itu mengalami masyarakat yang memang semakin suka gitu ya untuk kemudian melakukan aktivitas kerelawanan dan juga aktivitas-aktivitas kedermawanan, di mana sebetulnya kita tahu dua hal ini sangat penting ya pada yang namanya kerja-kerja filantropi, di mana masyarakat itu menjadi apa ya? Masyarakat itu menjadi semakin suka pada kegiatan-kegiatan filantropi. Yang paling sederhana adalah ketika misalnya di kelas ada yang sakit, sesama dosen ada yang sakit, itu kita pasti urunan, patungan gitu ya. Kemudian kita tahu pada masa pandemi, di mana sebetulnya diakui atau tidak, sistem kesehatan kita itu kolaps. Tapi kemudian kita bisa melihat yang terjadi di masyarakat kita adalah Pak RT, Pak RW, masjid-masjid itu membuat dapur umum, gitu ya. Ada beberapa yang lumayan tajir gitu ya, dan kemudian beli ambulan, menyediakan oksigen, menyediakan rumah yang kosong di lingkungan RT RW itu untuk isolasi mandiri. Nah, ini bisa kita lihat ya bahwasannya masyarakat kita itu sangat dekat sekali dengan filantropi. Nah, saya translate dalam bahasa Inggris dulu ya, agar Prof Kathleen sedikit memahami. So I will translate it to English. So in Indonesia, we know we see like the phenomenon of philanthropization. So this philanthropization emerge or rise after the Reformation era, after 1998, when the Indonesian society they become generous and they love to do volunteering. So, we see in our community, so in our village, in our blocks at home, so we see like people like donate their money, they become volunteer for like in the Independence Day celebration, and during the COVID-19 pandemics, we see, a lot of, like RT or block captains, also maybe like in the neighboring community, or also in the village level, like people, like the community, they try to do something during the COVID pandemic. We know that during the pandemic, our healthcare system was collapsed. But, the community, the Indonesian society, they try to do something. So they try to find like empty house or abandoned house to make like isolation house or isolation rooms for the COVID-19 patients, because at the hospital, so like the hospital is full, so we have no place on the hospital, we have no beds, and this community, like on the village level, on the blocks, captain levels, they provide like a house for isolation, and also they umum is like community kitchen. This community kitchen like produce foods, some nutritions for like COVID-19 patients in the community when they have self-quarantine at home or in the neighborhood area. So this is very interesting because we see like in Indonesia, like the spirit of philanthropy also, spread out in the community, in the Indonesian society. And also right now, like internationally, I think that the spirit of philanthropy is spread out too, and also image. We can see like right now, like private sector, so they try to be more responsible, and they right now they care about sustainability. So we know that right now we have like a lot of like private companies or like businesses or corporation. They try to do something on the supply chain, for the sustainability issues. Like now we have like in America, we have like big corporations, right? So this big corporation, they care about profit, of course. They care about people, and they care about planet. So how they can thrive economically, how they can contribute to the society with the people, and also with the planet. They care about the environment issues. So even like the businesses right now, they to be more philanthropic than before. So this is, I think, a part of philanthropization also. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, right now, so I think we also will learn from our speakers right now. So we will learn about the image of the community foundation. So we will learn about community foundation, how it how it was born in the American context, and also how this community foundation adopted in the US context. And we will see in Indonesia is that some foundations in Indonesia or some philanthropic organizations are they fit with this term of the community foundation, because community foundation can be in the community level, based on maybe religion, based on ethnicity, or based on interest, or maybe based on like a social groups and other other groups that they can form like a community foundation. So I think because this image of the community foundation, right now we can see more and more community foundation. So this is very interesting phenomenon that we can learn, and we can see the impact for our community in the level. So right now we have Prof. Kathleen McCarthy from the University of New York. Prof. Kathleen McCarthy, or I will call you Prof. Kathleen. Prof. Kathleen is the Director of Center on Philanthropy and Civil Society at the Graduate Center, University of New York. So we know that New York is one of the world's capital, very busy, very crowded, and I think we will see in the perspective of Prof. Kathleen, how she, how she see the community foundation and what is the impact for the grassroots level. And also we will, for the second speaker, we have Prof. Amelia Fauzia or Prof. Amel. We will see about how in Indonesia, do we have community foundations or, we have another term that relevant to the Indonesian context. So I think I will give the first chance to Prof. Kathleen to share about the community foundation in the US. Time is yours, Prof. Kathleen.
Is it on? Okay. Can you all hear me? If you can't hear me or if I'm speaking too fast, just flail and I'll take that as a message to slow down. Good afternoon. Selamat siang. I'm delighted to be here to have a chance to talk to you today, and I want to thank Professor Fauzia and the university for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. My subject, as was just mentioned, is the globalization of philanthropy that occurred over the last 30 years, particularly concerning the spread of community foundations around the world. There we go. Great. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Is anybody doing the slides? We have an expression in my country, Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. And oh, there we go. Terrific. Okay, my question for today's talk is up there, but I have lots of questions for you that I hope we can discuss, particularly because, particularly the question of where Indonesia would fall on the typology of how community foundations are developing around the world. The center that I direct at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York was one of the first of a crop of university-based centers looking at philanthropy and nonprofit organizations and NGOs in the late 1980s. Most of them focused on the US. Back then, wherever you went in the world, people talked about philanthropy as somehow being uniquely American, which is nonsense. And this is particularly true because I recently learned that Indonesia is the world leader in giving and volunteerism, at least according to the Charities Aid Foundation World Giving Index. And of course, your traditions are far older than ours. So I'm really interested in learning more about philanthropy in your country. As you can see, I've got some questions up there, so you can start doing your homework now. Next slide, please. Here we go. My center in New York has an International Fellows program that I'll be talking more about later in the talk. And if you want more information on it, please come up afterwards and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. One of the first questions we always ask our fellows is, what creates a culture of philanthropy in your country? Religion is always one of the key factors. Whether you look at Islam or Christianity or Judaism, they all have deep traditions of giving and volunteering that played out in different ways. In the United States, evangelical Protestantism was the driving force that taught people to give and volunteer on a regular basis, not just for charities and religious causes, but also social reform movements in the 19th century. And because they learned early on to give and volunteer for social reform movements, they also learned to give and volunteer for secular causes, which is very strong in my country as well. And that's still very much a part of the heart of American philanthropy, even for people who aren't evangelical or Protestant. Traditions of mutual aid are also important, particularly in places like sub-Saharan Africa. And I understand that you have a really strong tradition of mutual aid here in Gotong Royong. And if I've mispronounced that, please forgive me. Transnational exchanges also play a central role. For example, trade routes and Protestant missionaries help to spread religiously based traditions around the world. As an historian, I know that for all our talk about American philanthropy, my country was a backwater. It wasn't a leader until, in any sense, until the early 20th century. Until then, we borrowed almost every type of organization from Western Europe. But so most of these earlier transnational exchanges were influenced in particular countries. They were tied to the movement of people. But we're in a special moment now when the movement of ideas about philanthropy across borders is becoming increasingly globalized and systematized. The past 30 years have witnessed the growth of a genuinely global philanthropic community. So we're in a unique moment of time. Next slide. There we go. Much of the impetus came from American and European foundations. And this is what people tend to think of when they think of American giving. Grant-making foundations were the first really new American innovation, and they began at the early 20th century. And one of my questions for you at the end of my talk is, how common are grant-making and grant-making foundations in Indonesia? My favorite definition of foundations is a large pool of money surrounded by people who want some, which is fairly accurate, at least in my country. Endowed trusts that run specific programs have a very long history, including vakifs. But grant makers were new because their open-ended missions, like the Rockefeller Foundation's mission to work for the well-being of mankind, really gave them a lot of flexibility. This meant they weren't tied to a specific program or an institution like endowing an orphanage. And they had a lot of flexibility and the ability to adapt as conditions changed and new needs arose. Some of their characteristics are on the screen, along with my favorite cartoon concerning foundations. This is from a magazine called The New Yorker, and they even have a big copy of it framed in the Ford Foundation's headquarters in New York. From the outset, a few, like the Rockefeller Foundation, were very, very rich. John D. Rockefeller put about $200 million into his foundations in the early 20th century, and that would be worth billions of dollars today. Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and now the Gates Foundation have all had extraordinary amounts of money at their command. Gates currently has an endowment around $67 billion. Next slide, please. The latest chapter in the transnational development of philanthropy was spearheaded by some of these big American foundations and a few overseas foundations like Ford, Kellogg, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, beginning in the 1990s. And their interest was catalyzed by two things. First, the so-called global associational revolution, the upsurge of social activist and development NGOs around the world that began in the 1960s. The second was the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. American foundations and a few in Europe, like the Charities Aid Foundation, committed themselves to building strong civil societies around the world that would be locally funded and responsive to local needs. And this is why they got interested in community foundations. It was a way of ensuring that nonprofit organizations and NGOs and civil society would be sustainable over the long term. It was also a way of ensuring or trying to ensure that they wouldn't be heavily dependent on foreign donors. And it provided a way of ensuring that people would have a voice in the way their communities were run, one that wasn't dependent on or influenced by foreign funders. It was hoped that this independence could help to ensure the survival of civil society organizations over the long term. Next slide, please. A global network of infrastructure organizations also developed to study and strengthen the development of philanthropy and civil society around the world. The chronology is on the screen, and you can see that most of it was already in place in the 1990s. I've added the Center on African Philanthropy down at Witwatersrand, which is headed by one of my fellows, Centers International Fellows, because of it's one of a number of important non-U.S. university-based research centers that's redefining the very meaning of philanthropy around the world. And the Social Trust Fund here is another. This all has become a truly global phenomenon as well. Next slide, please. The CUNY International Fellows Program that I developed at my center was one of the first to get involved in global issues. When I started it, and when I said I wanted to work on international issues and international philanthropy, many of the Americans I spoke to they thought that I was crazy when I said I wanted to study philanthropy outside the US. They didn't believe it existed. And of course, they were completely wrong. The idea that this was a global phenomenon was that new. Before I started the program, I visited 10 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, including Indonesia. I interviewed over 100 NGO leaders for a report that went to the Ford Foundation's board, and they opened their field offices and helped me meet people. And I found two candidates, who were among the first 18 people who applied for our program, for our first group of international fellows. We now have over 250 alumni in over 70 countries on every continent but Antarctica, including Dr. Fauzia, who is one of the program's stars. And now we sometimes get as many as 600 applications for 5 to 10 slots. The world has changed tremendously. Many of our fellows went on to head the major national, regional, and international support organizations that have spearheaded the development of the field on every continent. Next slide, please. Basically, it's a leadership training program rather than a nonprofit management program. The fellows do graduate level research on models or from around the world with an eye to what might or be replicable in their country, how it might be adapted, or whether it wouldn't work at all. So it gives us a chance to learn from them. Their research papers help them get onto programs for international meetings, which further disseminates their findings. And they've also spun off a whole array of new institutions when they return. And as you can see here from the chart, they've created a lot of organizations, especially community foundations. So once again, if you want to know more about the program, please come up afterwards and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Next slide, please. Like the modern grant-making foundation, community foundations are another invention, American invention started a century ago, or at least I think we invented them. You can tell me if I'm wrong and if you've already had them here. Unlike private foundations, they have lots of donors and lots of trusts that they manage. In fact, they can lose their special tax status if they don't keep adding new donors each year. Each trust they manage has a specific mission and focus. But CF's community foundations also have a lot of flexibility because of the English common law notion of si pre, which means as near as possible. Private foundations like Ford can change their priorities when the trustees decide to do so. Community foundations can change the use of an endowment to something as near as possible to the donor's original intent when needs change, when it becomes impossible, impractical, or illegal to do. They were born in part from a concern about the dead hand controlling endowments from beyond the grave. For example, one of the silliest endowments that someone gave was for a baked potato fund at one of our richest women's colleges, Vassar, so that all of the students would have something to eat. But it was a really rich college, and obviously the students could afford to buy their own potatoes. So traditional endowments like this are very hard to change, and the money was wasted. If it had been at a community foundation, it could have changed to another use, like nutritional studies. So if I give money to a community foundation for something to help children, the trustees can update it, but they have to use it for children. In other words, they can't use it for zoos, no matter how much some of the trustees might like elephants. They cannot alter donor intent. Community foundations also created a lot of endowments, large and small, which can serve as a savings bank for the future that will always be updated to meet current needs, rather than simply keeping outdated institutions alive. So these were the major reasons why community foundations were created in the United States in 1914. Next slide, please. Thanks. The model took off, and now we have about 900 community foundations in the United States. No matter what size, they all make grants to local nonprofit organizations. But within that framework, there's a huge range. Some, like the New York Community Trust and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation out in Palo Alto in California, which is an IT center, it's a big tech center, are very rich, with endowments running into billions of dollars. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, who's on the top, gave over $2 billion to his donor-advised fund at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Others are small, serving mid-sized towns or even rural areas like the one in Minnesota that's pictured on the bottom. Next slide, please. And they become a worldwide phenomenon. In the early 1990s, there were only a few outside the United States, most in English-speaking countries. The first one in India, in Mumbai, was founded by one of our first international fellows. By the late 1990s, they were beginning to appear in Eastern Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa with seed money from American foundations. And a very wealthy Italian bank foundation, Cariplo, started them in northern Italy. But over the last 20 years, they've spread to every continent, as you can see up there. There are currently about 900 outside the United States, so it's become a genuinely global phenomenon. Most began along American lines, focusing on endowment building, grant making, professional staffs, and boards of local elites. And several completely failed because they didn't take the local givings of culture into account. This is a really important point that Americans learned the hard way. If imported institutions aren't adapted to local needs and local cultures of giving, they'll die. This was especially true in South Africa, where giving traditions are very deep, very widespread, and very different, including both social capital and money. So people began to ask, Who is the community in community foundations? Were they supposed to focus on donors' needs and wishes as a way to build their endowments? Or should they go in the other direction, placing their highest priority on community engagement and needs defined by the whole community rather than just large donors? Next slide, please. We were asked to do a report for one of our funders on the fellows' roles in building community foundations. And out of our 250 alumni, we spoke to 24 of the fellows, all of whom were involved in some way with community foundations or community foundation-like organizations, including Dr. Fauzia. And we tried to get a very broad geographical range. You can see the breakdown on the screen. Next slide, please. Two things came out of the report. One, we got a lot of recommendations about what community foundations needed to do in the future, but something we hadn't anticipated, we also got a typology about how they're changing around the world. So how are they developing in different cultures? And how is this changing and certainly challenging traditional American practices? We found 4 models, and I'm hoping you can help us fill in a 5th, each governed by different factors that shape their cultures of giving, including religion. The first is the American model. Next slide, please. And it's very vertical. It's very, like top down. This focuses on money and endowment building, and you can see up there where it's worked best. Because 19th century evangelical Protestantism promoted both religious and secular giving, its legacy can still be felt, and most of these organizations fund secular organizations. Although religious giving still accounts for about 30% of all the giving in the United States. There are some exceptions. Some of the Jewish organizations are community foundation-like organizations. There's even a Jewish community foundation in Los Angeles that funds Jewish organizations. Most American community foundations are donor-driven, both in terms of the emphasis on endowment building and through donor-advised funds like Mark Zuckerberg's, where donors can have a greater role in determining how their money is spent. Because many American-style community foundations focus on attracting large donors, getting the entire community involved in program development is often less of a priority. And to be really honest, a lot of them aren't as transparent as they should be. I personally don't know how anyone gets a grant from the New York Community Trust, which is one of our oldest and largest community foundations. They don't list all of their grantees in their reports or the pots of money that fund them. So it's hard to tell whether your organization or project would be something they might fund. Smaller community foundations obviously work much more closely with their communities, but they're all required by law to continue to add new donors. So money generally comes first in this model. Next slide, please. The situation is completely different in Eastern Europe. If money is at the center of donor-driven models, building trust is the highest priority in Eastern Europe. Because communist governments erased private philanthropy, their culture of philanthropy had to be entirely rebuilt. And there was a lot of mistrust. Mistrust of NGOs, mistrust of being asked to donate, mistrust of community foundations. Because they were new, because the whole concept of civil society was new, people didn't understand them, much less understand why they should support them. There also weren't a lot of wealthy donors. So rather than depending on the rich, Eastern Europeans pulled together a mixed portfolio of smaller donors and local governments and businesses. They also had to create fundraising events that were enough fun to attract middle-income donors. As one of our fellows said, we had to convince people that fundraising isn't always the dark side. Building endowments was hard because banks had a bad habit of collapsing in many areas. So where do you even put the money? So they started coming up with creative business models like one in Ukraine, which I hope is still alive. What they did was a group of local businessmen got together. They donated about $1,000 a piece. They renovated an old factory and turned it into a community center, which has a radio station, poetry readings, information on NGOs, and the best restaurant in town. So it's like really popular. And so what they do is they take 80 profits from the restaurant, making diners into donors. The underlying emphasis on all of this was finding a way to build community and to build trust rather than just building endowments. Next slide, please. Next slide. Great. Catholicism shaped the challenges for community foundation development in Latin America. Building community foundations in predominantly Catholic countries has been hard for several reasons. People give, but they give to the church. And the clergy, rather than the community, decides where the money should go. Secular giving is far less common. As a result, the small number of community foundations that have developed there so far have relied heavily on funds from businesses, especially multinational corporations and governments. The problem here is that business funding dries up when the economy worsens, and government grants have to be negotiated after each election. As a result, many community foundations develop projects around what businesses and government want, rather than the community as a whole. If any, few, if any, have been able to build endowments to sustain them over the long term. And because their funding is so unstable, you're working on a government grant, somebody else gets reelected, then you have to spend 6 months negotiating for a new grant. Professional staffs are hard to maintain. This also means that they have fewer identifiable programs of their own, which gives them less visibility. And this inspires less ownership and less trust on the part of the community, making it harder to attract individual donors. Like Eastern Europeans, they're trying to get more funding from the middle class and smaller donors from the grassroots. So they're using giving circles, which you may or may not have here in Indonesia, to attract small donors, where people put in a certain amount each week and they pool the funds. So this is an entirely different fundraising model than the American models. Next slide, please. Thanks. Some of the most interesting models are coming out of Africa and one town in Brazil, where the emphasis is building community initiatives from the grassroots up. Africa has deeply embedded traditions of mutual aid. Ubuntu is a South African word, which means I am because you are. So it's this idea that everybody is connected in significant ways. And people are trying to find a way to place this at the heart of the way that they develop community foundations. They want everyone to be involved in developing them and have a stake in the programs, whether it's because they've given time or they've given money. And like Ukraine, they want to find interesting ways to use business models based on communal resources like granaries, or a small fee, in addition to endowments and banks. And they want the recipients at the village level to be involved in designing the programs that affect their lives. They want them to be donors as well through giving circles or contributing time so that even the recipients have a vested stake, a personal stake in the programs. And there is also a strong emphasis on social justice rather than just professional expertise. So it's an entirely different philosophy. Next slide, please. One of the best examples of how this community focus plays out on the ground is in a mid-sized town in southern Brazil, Florianopolis, in a community foundation named ICOM, which is headed by another one of our fellows. It's extraordinary. As I mentioned, fundraising is really hard in a Latin American country like Brazil. So one of our fellows, Mariani Meyer, adopted a do-everything approach. She was committed to building a program that it would involve as much of the community as possible. And you can see some of the things that they're doing. One of my favorites is burger philanthropy, which people would, local merchants who with little restaurants would pledge $1 maybe 10, 20 cents for philanthropy out of every burger they sold. So it's sort of like cause-related marketing. And then when all the money was pooled and the campaign was over, Ecom identified possible recipients. They vetted them. They selected about 3, and the guys who ran the restaurants got to decide who would get the money, but they also asked some of their clients. There was a social justice giving circle that included both business people and people of smaller means to try to develop programs for groups that were discriminated against. If something didn't work, she recycled it. She was commissioned to do a study on training for disadvantaged to poor kids for tech industries, and the tech industries there were going to fund it. They decided they didn't want to, so she went to the local government, which was trying to promote this, and they were very enthusiastic. They got to, Ecom did the research, and it was so good that then local businesses began to fund them as well. One of my favorite examples was they had money to do a research project on homelessness. And they not only used people from the local university to develop the questionnaire, they got homeless people involved in developing some of the questions because they had firsthand experience with homelessness. So they made homeless people stakeholders rather than just recipients as well. They've done vital signs research projects which look at all the statistics, everything that's being done, and gets the community's opinion on what more should be done, and then that is a prelude to policy making. And they've done it on some of the SDGs, including environmental issues, things that are really interesting to corporations. And during the pandemic, they got their social justice group, the Giving Circle, to say, sure, you can use the money for people who in the poor areas who need food and other services. They worked with a national community banking organization to develop a program of e-coins, which they gave to people in the neighborhoods. This enabled them to go to local merchants instead of having to eat the food that was being handed out, which was stuff that corporations were trying to get rid of. This helped the local merchants. And then every week they got feedback on the way the program was going, both from academics and from people in the community. How is it working for you? So once again, everyone had a sense of ownership in the program, and they continually fine-tuned it on that basis. So this is community ownership to the power of 10. We talk about flexibility, we talk about accountability, we talk about transparency when we're talking about philanthropy. But I would argue that ownership is the most important. A feeling that everyone in the community has a stake in this program and has a voice in how it's being developed. Next slide, please. We also asked our fellows about challenges for the future. What needs to change for community foundations to flourish? Several of them mentioned a need for more inclusiveness, from small and mid-level donors to including younger people in the development of programs and even on boards. And of course, if you're doing a lot with fundraising online, it's really good to have kids involved in your programs. How do you create programs that benefit the whole community? They stress the need to build programs from the grassroots up as well as the top down. Once again, remember, this is an imported American model, which is very top down. And this is how it's changing. And these are lessons for American community foundations as well. There needs to be a stronger sense of widespread ownership. People need to know they have a voice in how the money is being spent. Community foundations can engage people, they can do background research, they can identify good candidates and do capacity building for local NGOs, and they can prepare the selection criteria. But then they need to step back to ensure that the community owns the project, that they're the ones who are making the decisions about what gets funded. And this is very, very different from the American model. Many called for more attention to social justice programs, as well as just funding existing organizations that deliver services. Community foundations need to be willing to promote change, as well as deliver services. So if people are poor, do you give them money for their next meal, or do you invest in training to help them get jobs, to get out of poverty? And several called for more effective ways to wed the United Nations SDGs to their programs at the local level, highlighting how communities are already addressing the social development goals, as well as what remains to be done, is an important tool for both getting community buy-in and also doing local consciousness raising. Next slide, please. So, my questions for you. Do you already have community foundations and community foundation-like organizations here? If so, where do they fall on the donor community continuum? What makes them unique? Is social justice an issue in their work? And if so, how does that play out? Am I even right in assuming that community foundations are an American invention, or has Indonesia excelled beyond us there as well? So I look forward to your answers. I am very eager to learn from you, and thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Kathleen. Ya, sudah betul. Yeah, so Prof. Kathleen tells us about the community foundation phenomenon in the US. So this is very interesting because on the media, we see that, you know, we familiar with like big private organization such as Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, but we never heard about this community foundation in the media, especially in the Indonesian media. And this is very interesting because we can see like the American philanthropy on different perspective or different side. So this is very interesting, Prof. Kathleen. So teman-teman, saya izin bicara bahasa Indonesia. Jadi fenomena ini sangat menarik ya, karena memang yang kita kenal di media itu rata-rata kan organisasi atau foundation besar yang terkenal ya, kayak misalnya Gates Foundation ya, yang didirikan oleh Bill sama Melinda Gates Foundation, walaupun sekarang sudah bercerai begitu. Kemudian ada yang didirikan oleh foundernya Facebook ya, ada Zuckerberg Foundation. Kemudian ada Rockefeller Foundation gitu. Jadi yang kita dengar itu adalah foundation besar, dan itu adalah foundation yang dibuat oleh keluarga-keluarga atau private foundations. Nah sekarang ternyata di Amerika itu sekarang banyak berkembang fenomena yang baru terkait dengan yayasan komunitas atau organisasi komunitas atau community foundations, di mana sebetulnya ini tumbuh dengan sangat masif di Amerika, bahkan mungkin sekarang itu jumlahnya itu lebih banyak ya daripada private foundations gitu, atau organisasi atau yayasan yang didirikan oleh keluarga-keluarga yang memang orang kaya begitu. Nah ini sangat menarik. Dan kemudian tentu saja ini memberikan sisi lain ya. Oh ternyata di Amerika nggak cuma ada private foundations loh, tapi juga ada community foundations yang memang dia berbasis komunitas dan mereka fokus kepada komunitas. Dan tadi ada beberapa karakteristiknya disampaikan oleh Prof. Kathleen. Itu pertama dia lokal ya, dan kemudian ada di area geografis tertentu gitu. Jadi spesifik pada satu tempat atau area tertentu, dan kemudian donornya juga banyak begitu. Jadi donornya rata-rata anggota komunitas tersebut, dan kemudian mereka ini berbasis komunitas dan fokus terhadap untuk membantu komunitas. Begitu. Dan kemudian juga dia bisa memberikan grants atau hibah, tapi juga dia bisa running program. Jadi dia bisa memberikan dana hibah dan juga bisa melakukan program sendiri gitu. Jadi dia bisa ngasih itu ke mereka jadi grant making organization. Jadi organisasi yang memberikan grant. Ada juga yang memang mereka juga melakukan program itu sendiri. Jadi dari komunitas oleh komunitas untuk komunitas. Nah kemudian tadi Prof. Kathleen juga menyebutkan model-modelnya itu ada banyak. Ada yang donor driven, di mana sebetulnya donor yang menentukan nih kita mau ngapain, begitu. Tapi juga ada yang model hybrid ala Eropa Timur. Nah, itu memang ada legacy nilai-nilai sosialisme dan komunisme di sana. Dan kemudian ada model hybrid ala Latin Amerika, di mana memang ada pengaruh kebudayaan atau budaya Latin Amerika. Di sana memang ada semacam kayak agama itu jadi hal yang penting, dan terutama agama Katolik. Dan kemudian ada juga community focus model ya, di mana nanti ada salah satunya juga memperjuangkan social justice begitu. Nah ini tentu fenomena yang menarik ya, karena ya tadi ya di media itu kita jarang dengar nih tentang community foundation, dan kita sekarang banyak gitu ya mendapatkan konsep-konsep ya atau ilmu-ilmu yang sedang berkembang di Amerika sekarang ternyata adalah community foundation. Nah kemudian berikutnya, nah jika community foundation itu sekarang sedang berkembang di Indonesia, dan tadi katanya community foundation itu tergantung dari local cultures of giving. Jadi dia sangat terpengaruh dengan tradisi kedermawanan di tingkat lokal ya. Jadi bagaimana budaya itu berpengaruh terhadap traditions of giving-nya tadi. Nah, makanya kita ingin melihat nih, sebetulnya di Indonesia ada nggak sih community foundation ini, atau yayasan komunitas atau organisasi komunitas seperti ini, dan kemudian apakah udah dari dulu, atau cuma fenomena sekarang yang memang sedang tumbuh begitu, sedang terbit, sedang lagi rame-ramenya, lagi berkembang, dan kemudian apakah bisa nih organisasi-organisasi berbasis komunitas Indonesia itu fit in gitu ya, atau dia pas gitu masuk ke terminologi community foundation. Dan kemudian nanti apa aja contohnya yang ada di Indonesia nih community foundations. Nah Alhamdulillah di sebelah saya sudah ada Prof. Amel. Nah, Prof. Amel nanti mungkin akan menceritakan sebetulnya dalam konteks Indonesia bagaimana community foundations ini. So, Prof. Kathleen already told us about the community foundations in the U.S. context, and we will see on the second sessions about how the community foundation exists in Indonesia. Is the community foundation exists in Indonesia when it exists or just like a new phenomenon like now, and also is that the term of the community foundation fit in with this local organization or religious organization in Indonesia. We will see, and Prof. Amelia will tell us more about the local context of community foundations in Indonesia. Prof. Amel, time is yours.
Thanks so much, Mas Haryo. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
It's an honor for me to sit here next to Prof. Kathleen McCarthy, who is, to me, she is my guru. Not only because I attended one of the most prestigious fellow program on philanthropy in the world at CUNY, but because of her expertise on philanthropy. Jadi saya bilang saya sangat terhormat bisa duduk di sini di samping Prof. Kathy, karena bukan karena saya menganggap beliau sebagai guru, bukan karena saya pernah hadir join di salah satu program fellowship yang dilakukan oleh Prof. Kathy, dan beliau memang penggagasnya, bukan hanya tapi karena memang ekspertis beliau di bidang filantropi. She wrote a lot about the philanthropy, especially history, within American history. Also on women. 2 days ago we had last week we had a workshop on women, religion and philanthropy, which is very excited finding we had. Saya akan forgive me, I will sometimes use Indonesian, sometimes use English. But thanks so much for your generous introduction on me, of Kathy. Okay, I would like to talk mostly about philanthropy and community foundation in Indonesia. I'd rather like commenting on the talk of Professor Kathy. Saya lebih banyak akan seperti memberi komentar, menjawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan hard question, difficult question from Prof. McCarthy. Next slide. Jadi pertanyaannya, are there any community foundation like in Indonesia? Ada nggak sih community foundation di Indonesia kira-kira? Terus bagaimana Indonesia itu sejalan nggak sih dengan global trend global terkait community foundation? In responding to Prof. McCarthy, I will refer to some of my works, and first to the community foundation concept that I read recently, and then I'm going to explain the context of Indonesia, especially the recent one, and then show you about typology of philanthropy institution in Indonesia, and look at the social trust fund as a case study, and then going into more general about the, let's say, what in Indonesia philanthropy is. Do we have any community foundation? So next slide. Prof. McCarthy already mentioned about the CAF, Charity Aid Foundation. Next slide, yeah, Charity Aid Foundation survey. 2 months ago, I was a moderator for a seminar, like a discussion at Philanthropy Indonesia. And then the main speaker was from CAF. And the speaker explained the methodology, etc., and the finding. And also he said few like comments like this. Many times when I presented the result, some people from any other countries asked me, how could be Indonesia become the most generous country in the world according to the survey? How about this country? How about that country? Jadi pas presentasi 2 bulan yang lalu, sekitar 2 bulan yang lalu, ada seminar. Di situ pembicaranya adalah orang yang dari CAF, Charity Aid Foundation, yang dimana hasil surveinya itu menemukan kalau Indonesia sebagai salah satu negara yang paling dermawan di dunia, terutama dalam 3 survei, 2018, 2021, and 22, menjadi nomor 1. Ya. Banyak yang komplain, kenapa Indonesia yang menjadi nomor 1 gitu. Terus explaining about the 3 questions, pertanyaannya tentang helping strangers, donate money, volunteering, etc. But I just want to say that actually the survey of CAF does not stand by itself, because we have a numbers of surveys from CNN, from APCC, if you recall, Asia Philanthropy Consortium, right? And then in Indonesia 2003, we had the first survey study on philanthropy, Islamic philanthropy in Indonesia, that we get a lot of criticism because we use the term philanthropy. Judul kami dibully, bahkan ditanya kenapa sih pakai istilah philanthropy. Nah, according to that research, we find that actually people who donate through zakat is 98%. Muslim give zakat. And 99%, I think, or maybe 99.3 give donation, any donation. It means the poor also give, right? So the CAF study actually supporting other studies in Indonesia. Jadi studi yang CAF yang the most generous itu sebenarnya didukung oleh studi-studi lain. Karena di studi misalnya tentang zakat, Indonesia itu 98% Muslim berzakat dan 99% bersedekah. Compared to other countries, I think the Pew Research Center held a survey on the alms giving for, I don't know how many countries, maybe 25, 30 countries. And then the highest percentage of Muslim to give zakat is Indonesia, 98%. Malaysia and Thailand, 93%. Jadi Indonesia nomor 1, 98%. Di bawahnya Thailand sama Malaysia 93%. How about Egypt? Egypt 70%. Afghanistan 91%, etc. So I think it because of we have a strong tradition of giving in Indonesia from long time ago, and it has been supported by faith-based giving, by the value of giving, not only by the tradition but also by faith. Okay, next slide. Before I could explain, answer the question, the very big question about community foundation in Indonesia. So I refer to the concept of community foundation that provided by Prof. Kathleen. recently, and also looking into the wings and then many other article and studies on community foundation. One of the quote that I like said that the community foundation concept has proved to be a flexible and adaptable instrument to meet not just immediate needs but the changing needs of communities over time. Jadi sejalan dengan tadi yang Prof Katie sampaikan, konsep-konsep ini bisa saja dipakai di berbagai tempat. The konsep itu tidak akan jalan. It would never run well if the foundation do not adapt with the local context. Ya. Jadi tidak akan bisa berjalan kalau tidak beradaptasi dengan kondisi lokal. Jadi community foundation kalau menurut Wings dan lain-lain ini mainly from Wings, seeking to improve the quality of life in a specific geographic community. Ya tadi sejalan ya, Prof Katie juga bilang. Having independency from government dan donors. Jadi kita bisa coba pikirkan, dibayangkan community foundation, misalnya bayangkan Deden yang di sebelah saya. Di sebelah saya berarti having independency from government, oke, ya kan? Seeking to improve quality of life in a specific geographic community, ya. Bukan seperti tadi driven by donors. Donorsnya itu donor seperti family foundation, bilioner. Ya sekarang malah mega donor ya, bukan mega donor. Terus governed by a board of citizen. Jadi dipimpin oleh ya masyarakat. Ya bolehlah tokoh tapi masyarakat biasa, bukan oleh pemerintah gitu. Making grants to other non-profit or runs program. Jadi memberikan grant kepada non-profit yang lain atau melakukan langsung program-program. Memang ini yang this is the point that in Indonesia mostly most of the foundation community like foundation runs the program. Only small percentage of them making grants to other non-profit, except the large foundation. And then multiple donors and endowment. Iya, ini pasti ya. Lembaga-lembaga filantropi kita itu kan disupport oleh berbagai macam donatur. Dari mana aja, dari macam-macam. Tidak hanya dari satu keluarga kaya. Kalau keluarga kaya ya itu family foundation. Building human resource, saya kira ini standar lembaga-lembaga filantropi gitu. Community leadership and partnership, I think it's also here. Open and transparent policies accountability. This is something that I think we learned from the reform era, that the kind of viral trend among philanthropy organization in Indonesia to have open and transparent policies. So the source of funding, the multiples from corporation, from government, individuals, and then community foundation serve 3 constituencies: charitable donors, non-profit organization, and community at large. Jadi Bapak Ibu sudah terbayang ya, kira-kira konteks community foundation from the concept we brought from the United States seperti itu. Next slide. We look into the Indonesian typology of philanthropy institution in Indonesia. I refer to the report from Philanthropy Indonesia, Philanthropy Outlook 2022. It mentioned there are 4 types of organization. Ada 4 tipe lembaga filantropi, let's say. Pertama, the first one is family foundation. Ya, kita tahu ada keluarga-keluarga yang memang memiliki yayasan. Itu dananya nggak usah dari mana-mana, sudah only fund dari satu keluarga aja itu udah berapa tahun ya, berapa turunan ya, udah cukup. Corporate foundation, kita tahu ada korporasi besar yang punya lembaga charity. Yang ketiga, ditulisnya istilahnya independent foundation. This is the term from the philanthropy Indonesia. Independent foundation from organizational donors and the public. And the last is religious foundation. Lebih sering religious foundation itu ya lembaga zakat, lembaga wakaf ya, tipologi tersendiri. So when looking at this 4 type, my question is there any more? Ada lagi nggak kira-kira? Tapi kelihatannya hanya 4, only 4. It looks like the community foundation type went into the third one, the independent foundation, yang di sini dicontohkan lembaga-lembaga yang ya, seperti Dompet Duafa. Gitu. However, there are some notes, important notes. Ada catatan. Tipologi ini tentu saja, this typology is not that simple, tidak sesimpel itu. Ada complexities dalam mendefinisikan which one is independent foundation, which one is religious foundation, because there are overlapping and gray areas. For example, we know Pak Yusuf Kalla. Yusuf Kalla is one of the billionaire in Indonesia, previous vice president, 2 period in Indonesia. He owned Yusuf Kalla Foundation. But then Yusuf Kalla Foundation registered as zakat, has a registration to collect zakat. So it also went into faith-based, right? Faith-based organization. It is family, but it also opened as become a zakat collection body. Itu satu contoh. Contoh lainnya banyak. Misalnya, for example, corporate foundation. We have so many big foundation like electricity, Telkomsel itu apa? Ya, technology, ya, telecommunication, owned by government. This big corporation owns a charity organization, so it owns apa istilahnya CSR, but it also owns zakat organization. So you can imagine zakat organization, but based on corporation. So it becomes quite not simple typology. This is from Indonesia, and nowadays after the reform era, more and more I heard about social and humanitarian foundation. There is no specific typology for it, but many organizations, especially from independent foundation, they tend to have program toward social and humanitarian foundation. Okay. Apart from this, like 1, 2, 3, 4 typologies, next slide, yeah. I just want to show that faith-based or religious foundation becoming more and more in a rise, not only in terms of the number of the foundation, but also in terms of the fundraising or income. You can see there is a table from the Philanthropy Indonesia study 2022, fund distribution trend in 2018 to 2020, according to philanthropy typology. So you can see actually the largest one, 77.7%, is from the religious foundation. From religious foundation. Family foundation itu angkanya segitu-segitu aja, stagnan. Yang paling besar adalah adanya distribusi dana dari lembaga filantropi berbasis agama. Therefore, next slide. I just want to show why religious foundation or faith-based foundation become very important, because of within Islamic charitable organization itself, there's so many diverse type of let's say foundation or organization. Yeah. State-based zakat body, we have a national zakat board. Of course, this is not community foundation, but national zakat board, you know, they have how many representative of community there within the board? Yeah. So even though Baznas, National Board of Zakat, is not community foundation, but it among 11 commissioner board members, from the state is only 3, right? 3 representatives. The rest is from leaders. Yeah. So and then we have social foundation. It is many we have, starting from the, I think it's from the Dutch colonial period, especially in the first period of 20th century. We have social foundation because of the Dutch influence, and then community-based zakat organization. This is a long time a tradition. People within the village collect zakat, but of course this is not organization, but it is like a committee, actually committee. But after Suharto period and the reform period, this type of committee becoming more and more modernized and professional. This is what I call philanthropy sasi. And the community-based zakat organization, there are so many types: mosque-based, NGO-based, like Dome Doafa is like a journalist, yeah, NGO-based journalist. From educational institution like Social Trust Fund, from big corporation and any other community, and also family foundation. So we also have Wakaf Foundation. We have like about 448,000 Wakaf estate. And also we have family foundation also. So it's highly diverse. There has been, of course, it is good, but the thing that is we need to pay attention is there is overlapping regulation and not integrative regulation. So I can say the poor regulation related to the philanthropy, and then charitable organization and practice as civil society. This is important point. Why Indonesia different from Middle Eastern Muslim countries? Because we use charity as a tool to empower society. And then we have strong tradition, especially from 20th century, from social religious organization like Muhammadiyah and Hidayatullah. Okay, now to give you more exact example, I will go now to Social Trust Fund. Well, this is established in 2012. It is true. Prof. McCarthy said that if I can say globalizing philanthropy, I get a kind of clear ideas about creating a philanthropy organization like Social Trust Fund. I learned from the philanthropy in the US. We learned from the community foundation also there. We also borrowed the word philanthropy from the United States. Many times I got criticism from my colleague from Europe. Well, Amelia, philanthropy is very American term. We in Europe, we have different context, of course, yeah. So kita memang meminjam term philanthropy itu dari konteks tradisi yang ada di Amerika. Tapi bukan berarti meminjam semuanya. It doesn't mean we borrow everything. No, Indonesia kita sudah punya tradisi yang kuat tentang filantropi. Nah, termasuk social trust fund ini sebenarnya mengacu ke trust fund yang kayak wakaf. And then it looks like any community foundation in Indonesia. So the aims of social trust fund, I think it's almost many organizations like us having endowment fund, making philanthropy works, quote unquote, promoting philanthropy for social justice, because we got a lot of funds from, we learn a lot from the Ford Foundation, where they better make empowerment advocacy, not giving fish, quote unquote, yeah. And then our works is, we call it CARE, Charity, Advocacy, Research, and Endowment. Itu wilayah kerjanya STF. And we got various sources of funding. Fundingnya itu dari mana-mana. Kalau tadi dengar tipologi community foundation, ya dari mana-mana fundingnya. Banyak juga donasi dari internal kampus, tapi dari publik juga ada. Oke, saya percepat ya, Mas. Next. Ya, ini social trust fund as community-like foundation. Karena kita ada boardnya itu ya biasa aja, tapi memang dosen-dosen di lingkungan UIN, ada diversity dari berbagai fakultas, and then we have staff, donors. Donatur social trust fund itu dari publik, dari mahasiswa, dari international agencies, international foundation juga ada. Once we got funding from community, Global Fund for Community Foundation long time ago. Kami juga dapat the core of social trust fund is actually volunteers, lecturers, staff, student volunteers. And this is what we, the program we have. But the STF program actually goes beyond the UN Jakarta community. Okay, next. This is examples of social trust fund program. Because we want to change traditional of giving into social justice philanthropy. So among of our program is like this. For example, Peace Scholarship Program for Muslims and Christian students in Poso and Papua. Karena begini, kita melihat kesejahteraan apapun itu akan hilang kalau ada konflik, kalau ada perang. Jadi bagaimana caranya supaya orang tidak berkonflik? Dan kenapa orang berkonflik? Karena mereka jarang ngobrol, jarang ketemu, jarang ngobrol. Akhirnya ada asumsi-asumsi negatif. Akhirnya kita buat. So this Peace Scholarship Program decided by community. Even who they want to give the scholarship for. From the villager said, and head of school said, okay, how about these children? How about the children? So they decide, not us to give this decision. And it is expensive for us to go there. So we just give a grant to a sekolah perempuan, women school there. Women school is actually a kind of community school for the women. It's organized by AMAN, Asian Muslim Action Network. So it's a grant making into AMAN, and then people did try to choose who they want to give the scholarship for. And the second example is the advocacy program, videos for advocacy on inclusive philanthropy. This is from Australia Award. And then the training on inclusive philanthropy fundraising. We got support from UNDP. And the last one is building the Musalla of Solidarity. This is, I'd like to give more time to talk about this. Building the Musalla of Solidarity. Next slide. Social Trust Fund got wakaf estate. It's given from the professor at uinjkt estate at the Cidokom village, Bogor, West Java, nearby my house. And we make a Center for Rural Community Development and Social Entrepreneurship for that. But there is only one building and mostly large empty land estate. So we wanted to make musola there, but we call it musola serbaguna, like multi-purpose musola prayer room, multi-purpose prayer room. So one day there is a organization called CUNY. It's architect NGOs based on architect in the UK email us, hey, do you want to collaborate? And then I just like see the email. I saw the email. I just okay, yes. And then we just create a program to make this building. So 24 volunteers, mostly from UK, from 10 countries, including Colombia, where else? I forgot. Came to us, stay 6 weeks from July to August. So we do fundraising. Fundraising is only to pay the materials, sand, cement, etc. But all of the international volunteers, they pay themselves for their tickets, meals, etc. So you can see the picture of the Musola of Solidarity. We name it Musola of Solidarity. And then what I like is the involvement of male and female volunteers, local leaders, lecturers, and also, of course, from the international volunteers. So next slide, we inaugurate the Musola on the 1st September, I think, yeah. 1st September last year. And what the mission of Social Trust Fund is actually to bring people from different culture and religious background to talk and to engage in social activities. So there is a social interaction and dialogues. So interreligious dialogue, let's say, inter-civilizational dialogue, because most of them coming from the Europe. Yeah. So there is a solidarity of humankind and tolerance. Jadi poin dari pendirian musola ini sebenarnya untuk menemukan dua kelompok masyarakat yang jarang sekali bertemu, terutama di Bogor yang dikenal dengan daerah yang cukup banyak kelompok intoleran, let's say, termasuk di dekat rumah, next to the area is former terrorist conflict actually stay there, and he engaged for the development of establishment of musola together with the international volunteer. Jadi menarik karena bisa engage dengan para volunteer. Ada yang once one of the housewife wanted to invite the volunteer to stay in their house. The mother said like this, is it okay? Do they want to stay in my house? Yes, of course. And then when they work building the musola, they use the common clothes, right? Not the sexy clothes. Jadi mereka tanya, itu orang-orang Barat beneran tuh mau tinggal di tempat saya? Terus beneran tuh. Mereka kalau kerja tuh bajunya kayaknya normal ya, biasa kayak kita gitu, nggak pakai baju yang seksi-seksi kayak di TV katanya, di film. Jadi image mereka tentang Barat itu jadi yang salah itu hancur gitu. Dari mereka juga sama. Most of them say like, wow, there are volunteers, including women, also wanted to like digging the land, etc. That's amazing to see Muslim women here, which is different from my impression before. Jadi mereka bilang, oh ternyata Islam, perempuan Muslim punya freedom, punya independensi dan bisa volunteering untuk kayak gini di luar dugaan saya, di luar bayangan saya tentang Islam. Jadi ini poin yang menarik sekali. So the Musola got award from what is it? Architect Journal Award. We won that award. We posted, and somebody from the organization called us, etc. And one more is one of the volunteer made a video on the former terrorist conflict, and video published in The Guardian. Kita tahu ya, Guardian itu media yang seperti apa. Jadi tentang video tentang bagaimana apa ya, yang menghancurkan anggapan tentang terorisme di Indonesia itu seperti apa. Itu hancur gara-gara salah satunya kita bantu melalui video ini gitu. Yang ternyata mengkritik anggapan-anggapan yang salah tentang radikalisme di Indonesia. Oke, next to slide is shortly about Community Foundation Indonesia. Yes, I will say yes. We do have Community Foundation in Indonesia, but with the local Indonesian context. But mainly it is operating foundation, not grant making foundation. We have so many names, example, like Dompet Duafa, Rumah Zakat, Social Trust, and so many. I think in Indonesia we have more than community foundation than family foundation, corporate foundation. That's why if you see the table from the philanthropy Indonesia, you can see the large number is the community independent foundation and religious foundation. This is, I would say, community driven, which where the building trust become very crucial, important. And the last is that last slide, the growing number of local or independent community-based philanthropy organization mostly start within the reform period, 2000 and until now. Yes, we do borrowing the term, but it doesn't mean we are the same or we follow the typology from the US. So Indonesia, we have also a lot of many international organizations. For example, Caritas in Indonesia, they make like the name change, Karina. And then apa lagi? World Vision, we have Wahana Visi Indonesia. So they, yeah. We have many international branch of international foundation organization. And some of community foundation in Indonesia becoming more and more internationally knowledge. Not many, it's quite limited, but going there. So there is a massive establishment of faith-based philanthropy and state recognition in long-term national program like SDGs, etc. And this is massive, including the national program for Indonesia. They have a philanthropy section, and then ask us to give some insight for them. I think I will stop this. Basically, I already answered your hard question. Thanks so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ya, terima kasih banyak Prof. Amel ya. Tadi Prof. Amel sudah menjelaskan banyak ya mengenai local konteks dan apakah istilah community foundation itu juga ada di Indonesia gitu ya, sejalan dengan perkembangan community foundations di dunia internasional. So thank you so much Prof. Amel for telling us about how this community foundation emerged in Indonesia also. Yes, Bu Amel said that with its local context, yeah, And there is like so many typologies in foundations in Indonesia. We know like family foundations, like independence organization, and also other organizations. And I think this is very important because, as like the most generous country, so we have so many foundations, organizations that manage these public goods. Okay, thank you so much, Bu Amel. Yeah, so I think that we already know about community foundations. And I think that a lot of us, we have some experience with philanthropy. Maybe as, we work in the philanthropic organizations, or we already be like donors on the organizations. Also, maybe we are the right holders or the beneficiaries of philanthropic organizations. And maybe we play another roles. But I believe that, all of us here, we already have engagement or interaction with local philanthropic organizations. So I think we are going to the Q and answer sessions. So I think we open like two opportunity for you in this room, and also one more is from the online participants. Okay, so if you want to ask something or you want to the topic, so just let us know by waving your hand, and then tell us about your comments or your questions. So anybody want to give comments?
All
Ya,
right.
Bu, silakan.
And also for those who are joining in online Zoom, you can raise your hands by the feature, and then we can, okay, or type down your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Okay, my name is Erika. I'm a lecturer at Faculty of Economic and Business. For Catherine, I would like to ask about the philanthropy institutions in apa masuk ke kategori religious fund kah atau yang lainnya? Satu. Terus yang kedua ada dua, Prof. Amel. Dari data yang ada tadi 98% zakat adalah untuk zakat. Nah, menurut Prof. Amel saat ini apakah kondisi 98% tersebut sudah bisa memenuhi kondisi populasi di Indonesia tidak untuk reduce the poverty? Ya, terima kasih.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for a really tough question. I so appreciate it at the end of the long day. It's a really good question. We do have a few that receive government appropriations like the Eurasia Foundation, but they also receive private donations. It's unusual to have government funded foundations. We had another one to promote voluntarism, which was called the Points of Light Foundation. And that was heavily government funded. but it's not a common model in the United States. Usually, the government won't use the term foundation. It'll just, stamp it as a government program. So those are the two that I can think of which receive significant amounts of government funding. But thank you for making me think. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, but Prof. Kathleen, I hear somebody like one of my friends, he said that like the state or the government is the biggest non-profit. So because they work like for public goods, right? Not for like profits or something. Do you agree with that?
Oh. Well, a lot of people in government make a lot of profits. So once again, it's a very complex question. Is the American government not for profit? I don't even know how to wrap my head around that question. We get a lot in taxes, and some politicians get a lot from other sources. But I don't. My government is a nonprofit corporation, particularly not at tax time. When I'm forking over a significant portion of my paycheck. So no, I don't really see it as a nonprofit corporation.
Okay, thank you for confirm that. So yeah, and the second for Bu Amel, yeah. So we know about Basnas here. So Basnas, we can put Basnas in which typology, and also like mostly we have a lot of zakat organization, zakat management organization or less. So is that any impact on the reducing poverty nationally? So
Terima kasih banyak, ini pertanyaannya berat. Tentang Basnas. If we refer to the concept of the community foundations within the US, itu jelas Basnas bukan termasuk community foundation. Kata-kata foundation itu tadi Katie bilang itu memang ya non-state gitu ya, NGO non-state, community based kalau kita di sini bilang. Kata-kata foundation, charity itu non-state. Kalau ada charity di negara-negara yang lain itu negara-negara kayak di Amerika, di Eropa, yaitu ya komunitas. Tidak ada ke pemerintah negara. Negara itu ya pajak. Tadi yang saya bilang kawan saya yang dari Eropa itu dari Norwegia, mereka pajaknya bagus sekali. Dia bilang kita nggak perlu banyak-banyak charity di sini. We don't need a lot of charity here in my colleague in one of the state in Norwegia, let's say, because state already deal with everything. Dia bilang kalau ada apa-apa, ada bencana, ya kan kita bayar pajak, state yang ngurusin gitu. Jadi konteksnya beda-beda. But it doesn't mean there is no philanthropy there. Bukan berarti kemudian tidak ada charity, tidak ada filantropi. Bentuknya yang agak beda. Jadi kalau Basnas, waktu saya mencoba menulis tentang Basnas dulu waktu di disertasi, diskusinya panjang. So when I want to write about National Zakat Board, right, for my dissertation, so my supervisor, we had quite a long discussion with my supervisor. Oh, this is kuasi. Jadi apa kalau bahasa Indonesia ya, kuasi juga. Semi, semi pemerintah, semi masyarakat. Jadi agak susah. Because Basnas also involve leaders, community leaders there. Jadi ini tipikal distinctive ala Indonesia. Seperti itu. Tapi kalau tadi, if we refer to the definition or the concept from the state, itu bukan community foundation. Dan masuknya ya masuknya kalau Basnas ya mungkin ke religious foundation itu. Tapi ditambah state gitu ya. Yang sebenarnya religious foundation rata-rata sebenarnya non state di sini. Jadi memang ada semi lah. Pertanyaan yang kedua, whether 98% is enough for the poverty reduction. Ini kalau lecturer from economics, very smart in trying to find out to limit the poverty. I know. Well, no, not enough. 98% it is for zakat only. If you know, Bu Erika, in many of the organization like Dompet Duafa, if we ask how much is the percentage zakat and how much is the percentage people give sedekah or wakaf, yang income from zakat itu kecil. Jadi memang dalam konteks Islamic philanthropy itu unik. Kita punya zakat yang wajib, tapi memang angkanya kecil. Kita punya wakaf, harusnya buat orang-orang yang kaya, yang besar-besar, billion rupiah gitu kan. Kita punya sedekah. So in Islamic philanthropy we have three kinds of form of giving. Zakat. Zakat is obligation according to the religious law, but it is very small portion, only 2.5% of the wealth kan, sedikit sekali, kecil sekali gitu. Mostly people afford it, dan itu juga bagi yang mampu. To whom afford, he could give zakat. If not, yeah, no. Jadi kecil sekali memang. Pertama itu, dan rata-rata lembaga-lembaga filantropi itu lebih banyak kepada sedekah, apalagi humanitarian funds, ya, donation is very huge. Dompet Duafa kalau tinggal ngumumin di mana ada krisis, humanitarian crisis, fundraising with easy to get fund. Jadi kecil sekali sebenarnya pendapatannya itu untuk zakat. Tapi sebenarnya bisa dibantu kalau effective giving, effective distribution. Persoalannya kan kita banyak aturan di zakat itu yang sangat strict. Misalnya tempo hari saya lagi di acara workshop atau di mana gitu, saya lupa. Dia bilang begini, boleh nggak sih Bu, ini kita harusnya progresif dong. Boleh nggak kita, di acara di ekonomi yang pas acara sebelumnya dengan Prof Minako Sakai. Bisa nggak zakat fitrah itu ya kan langsung dibagikan untuk program-program jangka panjang gitu kan. Ya kalau kita mikir secara rasional mungkin bisa saja gitu kan. Tapi kan banyak yang nggak bisa, teksnya bilang begini dan tradisinya bilang begini. So I'm explaining about the challenge to effective giving because many religious funds they are quite strict in terms of the use related to the certain text, so it's quite difficult. Yang terakhir Bu Erika, karena nggak cukup juga, karena responsibility of membantu orang-orang miskin itu bukan responsibility di charity, the responsibility of the state to me. Jadi kalau ada orang miskin yang bertambah, jangan salahkan lembaga filantropi udah banyak-banyak. There are so many philanthropy foundation now. There should be no poverty. Well, it is not the responsible for the philanthropy organization per se, right? We help. The obligation is in the shoulder of the state, pemerintah. Jadi ya itu poin saya. Mudah-mudahan terjawab.
Ya, yang terakhir sangat berkesan Bu buat saya, karena itu memang responsibility of the state ya, itu tanggung jawab pemerintah. Karena ya tadi, kalau kita lihat hulu hilir ya, jadi sebetulnya yang kita lihat itu kan gejala-gejala kemiskinan ya. Jadi apa yang menjadi yang kita lihat sekarang orang nggak bisa makan, nggak punya akses pada fasilitas kesehatan atau pada kesehatan, karena memang itu hilir ya, gejala dari kemiskinan. Nah kemiskinan sendiri ini kebakarannya itu sumber kebakarannya ini apa gitu? Ya, it can be like the policy, the public policy of the state. Jadi mungkin ya karena itu, karena mungkin kita terutama teman-teman di organisasi filantropi mungkin ya ada misalnya Basnas atau lembaga yang lain ada program-program from mustahik move to muzaki begitu ya. Usaha konveksi berkembang sebulan 2 bulan berkembang bagus ya. Pendapatan lebih dari UMR, tiba-tiba keran impor pakaian bekas dibuka, kemudian impor pakaian dari negara jauh itu dibuka, dan jadi para konveksi kita ini yang memproduksi pakaian tidak bisa bersaing dan langsung kolaps begitu. Ya sama halnya dengan pemberdayaan di pertanian dan lain sebagainya. Memang tadi ya, memang hulu hilirnya ini kalau poverty reduction itu memang perlu banyak untuk apa ya, mengintegrasikan tadi ya Bu ya, bukan overlapping program. Itu, dan kemudian menarik juga ya, karena dana zakat sebagian besar digunakan untuk charity ya, untuk pelayanan sosial ya, atau program kemanusiaan. Jarang sekali yang memang berinvestasi di zakat produktif program ekonomi. Apalagi ada fikih juga yang mengatakan zakat itu harus habis dalam setahun. Jadi kalau dia jadi multi years grant itu masih diperdebatkan di kalangan para fuqaha. Nah ini yang memang jadi perbincangan di kita semua. Oke. Second participants, yes, Bu, silakan. Oke. Mau Bu nggak kelihatan. Ya, nanti langsung ke depan, kemudian kita di online belum ada yang tunjuk tangan soalnya, dan belum ada yang bertanya via chat box.
Okay, thank
Silakan.
you. My question addressed to both of you, Prof. Kathleen and Prof. Amel. First for Prof. Kathleen, is there any from your presentation in the first slide, you, if I'm not mistaken, that the philanthropy in US drives by religious motives, right? And then, is there any case that community foundation in US also part of the transformation from the religious philanthropy itself? And then the second question is about the discourse of social justice or inclusive mostly come from the Western, and the community foundation in Indonesia right now is I see that we forced to be more inclusive and to be more social justice. So is there also, in the US, the community foundation is more local. So is there in the US also adopting the inclusiveness that the community foundation also helps another community that difference from their community, something like that. Okay, thank you.
And next.
Thank you. My question for Prof. Katie, or maybe for Prof. Amel. Prof. Katie mentioned that there is less emphasis on social capital and community engagement in the philanthropy. I'm from economic, Prof. Maybe I quite still learning about the social capital, the importance of social capital in the microfinance or in the philanthropy. But based on my reading that social capital, one of the philanthropy established is based on social capital. But you mentioned that less of emphasis in social capital in the philanthropy or community engagement. So what actually the social capital function in the philanthropy? I need more information about that. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. In terms of just starting with your question, social capital could be anything from putting people in touch with other leaders or possible donors using your contacts, right? To if there's a program where people want to build a school, using not only the money, but getting local people to help build it once you got the materials. So those are two very different levels of using social capital, but one is contacts and social networks, and the other is actually time and labor, okay? Or social capital might be you don't have a lot to give, but you can get a group of your friends together and get them all to form a giving circle at the local level. And that's a very different kind of use of social capital. It's using your time rather than your money to create something to do grassroots funding. So, or it can be ideas, you know, like people come in, they want to do something for your community, and you can mobilize meetings of people to talk about what the community needs most. But people among your peers, not, you know, people coming in from the outside and saying, we're going to do this for you. So there are different ways that people can use social capital, from volunteerism to social networks. Okay. And then going back a bit, you talked about community foundations here being forced to be more inclusive. There are some community foundations in the United States that are trying to become more inclusive as well. And that's how, you know, things learned in other parts of the world are affecting my country. There's one in Florida, for example, called Collaboratory, which has thrown all the hierarchical rules out the window and is doing widespread community consultation to try to understand what should be done in the community. And could you repeat the rest of your question to me? I didn't write it all down.
The first question, yeah, it is about the formation of the community foundation in the US. It is also drives by the religious philanthropy?
You know, that's, once again, I mentioned Jewish giving, and that's become big business, and they have a lot of donor advised funds in many Jewish organizations, and there even is a Jewish community foundation. I imagine if you looked at Catholic charities, you would also find donor advised funds. It hasn't been studied as well. I think Protestants would probably give to the local community foundation instead. But I think if you dug a bit, you would find a lot of different variations among religious groups. As Professor Fauzia pointed out, one of the, you know, sort of standard definitions that comes out of the US is that it's community-based, but there are different kinds of community. In the US, normally it meant geography, but now, you know, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation is doing diaspora funding. So what's your community? Is it Palo Alto or is it the world, right? And people are stretching this, but you can also have a religious, you know, a community of religious adherents. And once again, it's a really good question, but we don't have enough research beyond the very prominent model of Jewish giving. And there, once again, these organizations have become very wealthy, and some of the criticisms have been, as they've gotten richer, they've become more donor driven and less keyed to the needs of the local community. So both of these are terrific questions. Thank you. And easier to answer than the first one.
Thank you.
Ya, saya kira cukup tadi ya jawabannya. It's a comprehensive answer from Prof. McCarthy. I wouldn't add anything. I want to stress that these two questions from two of you about social capital and an inclusive giving with the community foundation, two interesting and important field that needed more study. So I encourage you to do study then.
Yeah, let me just answer this from an American standpoint. Robert Putnam is one of the people who did a lot of work on social capital and voluntary organizations. And he stressed that there are two kinds of social capital, bridging and bonding. And bonding obviously is, with your own group. Bridging is reaching out to others. So that's where a lot of our discussions about social capital have been. And also, as voluntary associations in my country have changed and provided less room for volunteers as they became professionalized, the professional staffs are running the programs and they may be doing fundraising online and through direct appeals. There's been, Putnam would have argued that we're losing the kind of social capital that we had when many American organizations were run as volunteers. He wrote that before our political system became as politicized and divisive as it is. In the 1990s, the big discussion was, why is nobody participating in the public sphere? That's changed completely now. And if you look at some of these groups like on the right, like the Tea Party, that's social capital, bonding social capital to the power of 10. So more and more people are getting involved, not necessarily volunteering for nonprofit organizations in the same way they historically did, but they're getting involved in these grassroots political groups. So it's been an enormous shift since Putnam wrote Bowling Alone in the 1990s. And that's what really ignited the conversation about social capital, but also, once again, the 90s were crucial because it was after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Civil society was everything. That's all people talked about. And so Putnam and Theta Skocpol were very influential. Since then, after September 11th, the conversation changed. It changed dramatically, and it became much more divisive in all sorts of ways. But in the 90s, it was all about community and community building and all kinds of social capital and worlds of possibility, in a way that sadly it is not as much about now.
Well, very interesting answer. The book that she mentioned, written by Robert Putnam, tulisannya ya, we call it Putnam, Indonesian spelling. Ya, Bowling Alone. Ini buku yang penting sekali untuk bicara tentang social capital dan menyebutkan social network ya dan volunteering yang menjadi penting. Satu poin saya kira yang buku ini publish tahun 1990. Setelah itu tremendous change yang terjadi di dalam konteks Amerika yang sekarang politisasinya itu sangat tinggi. Prof Katie itu nggak pernah mau nyebut nama presiden dia. No, I'm saying presiden sebelumnya bukan yang sekarang ya. Sama-sama dari New York ya. The same from New York, but she doesn't want to mention the name of the previous president. Poinnya adalah terjadi perubahan yang masif setelah buku ini, setelah Bowling Alone ini. Itu kan public sphere ya. Jadi orang kok nggak mau ke coffee shop bowling lagi gitu. Kenapa gitu kan? Dan ini terjadi setelah September 11 dan banyak politisasi. Maybe one of the more I don't know whether this benefit for the philanthropy practices is the now technology and then internet netizen, you know.
In the 90s, Putnam's explanation was television. Everybody was turning into what we call couch potatoes. So they were all parked in front of their TVs instead of going out and joining groups, either as volunteers or bowling groups, you know, developing social capital. Now, of course, it's the internet and everybody is stuck on their phones, which is absolutely universal. But you know, it's a different kind of social capital. If you're just, you know, sitting in front of your TV, it's you and the TV. But, you know, with the devices, with the IT mentality that we have now, you know, there are opportunities for developing social capital in either very healthy and bridging ways or, unfortunately, once again, using my country as an example, in very divisive ways. You know, and we have groups that, you know, or coalesce around crazy conspiracy theories and things like that, which is really kind of scary. So you can do something good like GoFundMe, or you can get involved in these very divisive, really strange groups that, you know, think Martians are abducting people, and you have, you know, child slaving rings coming out of pizza parlors. So, I mean, it's really, it's a strange time in my country.
Your task to explain.
Yeah, we have another questions to Prof. Kathleen. So this is from Denny. Denny is the Zoom participant, and he asks about I am interested about donor focus model, about American model, vertical structure, and other things. But the challenge is about the community engagement. Is it because of social gap between the rich and the poor people? And only rich people can give donation, but the middle people and the poor cannot help the other.
At community foundations, you can have funds of any size, and you can also have them coalesce around a specific initiative. You know, like a community foundation could create a fund for disaster relief in the area and then have that on hand if something happens. So you can get smaller donations, but if your aim is to build an endowment or lots of endowments, then the rich become predominant. Now, there are many, many other kinds of philanthropy in my country, and one of the important areas that's growing are these giving circles, and some of them are quite small. And, you know, here we're really following African models, and I'm sure you have giving circles here as well. But this small scale giving, pooling resources, and then using it for philanthropy is something that's getting wider based, particularly in minority communities where there may not be as much money, but there is a very, very strong tradition of generosity and mutual aid. So, you know, I'm talking about one cut with community foundations. And because this has been an exported model that has taken off in very different ways in different parts of the world, but we're learning more from Africa about giving circles. And then, you know, with our fellows program, we had African fellows talking about it, and then African American fellows started doing it in the US, and then some fellows down in Buenos Aires in Latin America created women's giving circles, and they're trying to redefine the meaning of philanthropy from the grassroots up down there. So it's, you know, it's fascinating to see how these ideas echo around the world and how different groups are adapting them in different ways.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. Kathleen. So ya, semoga Mas Denny jelas ya dengan penjelasan dari Prof. Kathleen tadi. Okay, so Denny, the participant in Zoom say thank you, Prof. Kathleen. Yes. Oke, ya saya pikir tadi pertanyaan dari Mas Denny ya dari ITB Ahmad Dahlan adalah yang terakhir gitu ya. Nah, kita mungkin kalau ada pertanyaan atau apa bisa kita lanjutkan diskusinya setelah ini, mungkin bisa tanya langsung setelah kita selesai. Dan saya simpulkan sedikit saja bahwasannya Community Foundation ini adalah fenomena yang tidak hanya terjadi di Amerika Serikat, tapi juga terjadi di berbagai belahan dunia lain, termasuk di Indonesia. Nah, kita berharap sebetulnya organisasi komunitas ya atau community foundation ini sebagai bentuk tadi ya localization of aid begitu atau lokalisasi bantuan kemanusiaan atau lokalisasi kerja-kerja filantropi dengan harapan tadi ya ada local donor, local resources dan kemudian tadi ya ada social capital yang dimainkan sehingga memang filantropi ini dirasa lebih relevan untuk melayani anggota komunitas. As a conclusion, so I think I will conclude that in very simple way that the community foundation phenomenon is not only the American phenomenon, but also it spread out all over the world. And also in Indonesia. So we can see from the explanation of Prof. Amelia that, the community foundation also exists in Indonesia. That's all from our seminars today. So I hope that everybody can learn a lot, can learn more about the community foundation. And I think that after this, so we have like a promise in ourselves that we will support the community foundations, maybe in our neighborhood, in our areas, or maybe we love some specific hobby or something like that, issues that we can support. So we thank you so much, Prof. Kathleen and also Prof. Amelia, for your generous lecture also. So we can know more about the community foundation. So, and also I thank you so much for all of you that already come to this seminar today and learn together about the community foundation. That's all from me. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And before we go to the next agenda, so we would like to invite all the participants here in this theater room and all the incredible speakers today and all the moderator to capture and for the moment today. And maybe for the incredible speaker, you can please stand up here and face to the screen. And we will take a picture together. So for all the audiences, can you please move to the middle seat so that we can get full of you. No, for the participant, just sit on your own seat, but you can move to the middle. And for all the speakers and the moderator, you can please stand up here and face to the front. Okay. Duduk. Yes. For the speakers, they stand up, face to the screen, and for the audiences, you can sit, but move to the middle, tapi pindah ke tengah biar kelihatan semuanya. Okay. That's okay. Oh yeah, all right. So now let's change. So everybody please move to the stage and then we take a picture together. And I want a volunteer to help me to take a moment today. Are you? All right, so everybody who are joining online, please open your camera so that we can take a picture together with Prof. Kathleen and also with the other speakers today. All right, so for all the men, you stand up behind the women. Okay, so for all the men, maybe you can stand up behind the woman. Sorry. All right, so yeah. Ada meja. Yang mainnya di belakang. Gimana? Ya, kelihatan nggak Pak? Di sini boleh. Okay. So let's say cheers together maybe ya. So let's count from number 1, 2, 3. Cheers. One more time. Maybe we can give thumbs up for seminar today. And then let's go. 1, 2, and 3. All right, is it enough? All right. Thank you very much. So all audiences, you can go to your seat again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We have come to the end of this enlightening and informative seminar. So I hope you all enjoy and get benefit from this seminar. And also, for conclude this seminar, let's say Alhamdulillah together. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. And thank you very much and have a nice day.